In this IOB podcast, fast talkers and slow talkers take note, and a critique of the podcast that wouldn't die. This is the IOB Podcast. I'm your host, Mike, and it's my goal to make your podcast the best. It's great to be back, and thank you so much for joining me, everybody, in the IOB Podcast. This is episode number 6. We're just moving along. I can tell you right now, episode number 7 is going to be an interview, and maybe episode number 8 too. We have so many interviews coming up. Very excited. But let's get to this podcast. So the title was, Fast Talkers and Slow Talkers. So, did you ever watch Seinfeld? I love Seinfeld. Seinfeld was so great. And in Seinfeld, they had close talkers, low talkers, and high talkers. Do you remember the close talker? Yeah, that's a famous actor. I can't remember his name. But basically, he just gets in your face and talks. So, hey, how are you doing? Have you been to the Metropolitan Museum? I'd like to take you there. Why don't we go today? And he's right in your face, a close talker. And then they had the low talker. That was with the puffy shirt episode. Do you guys remember that? Kramer was dating a woman, and she was a low talker. Basically, it was like this. I'm a fashion designer, and I have a new puffy shirt, and everyone has a... Nobody can understand what she was saying except Kramer because she was a low talker, low volume, I guess. And then there was the high talker. And this was, I think it was Elaine's friend. Her boyfriend had a very high-pitched voice and kind of sounded like a woman. And the lines were something like, Jerry Seinfeld, I can't get him out of my head. He's all I ever think about. But it was actually a guy talking, and it sounded like he was interested in Jerry. So this whole idea of a certain type of talker is kind of funny. Close talker, low talker, high talker. And in podcasts, to the best of my knowledge, we can categorize three types. Normal talkers, right? Like you and me, right? But there are those that are fast talkers, and there are those that are slow talkers, all right? And this is something that actually you should really pay attention to. You might be a fast talker, you might be a slow talker, and the way you start your show can actually be really important. And what I mean by that is when you first tune in, you want to get the listener tuned in to your voice, right? So if you're a fast talker, the listener needs to get ready. But if you're a slow talker, the listener also needs to get ready. And this is something that we really need to consider. And if you don't know whether you are a fast talker or a slow talker, go ahead and send me your podcast and I'll let you know, yeah, you're fast, yeah, you're slow, or no, you're just like me, or I think me, you're a normal talker. Okay, so let's go back to the intro. So you've designed your intro, right? You've got music picked out. The music is designed for you and your show, right? It's specifically designed to be a podcast intro like ours. Did you hear our new intro? Yeah, this is the new intro that TJ made. It's got a country twang to it. I like it. I wouldn't normally put my voice to country music, but we're just showing you some flexibility in openings. Anyway, so that intro is specifically designed for a podcast. And TJ did make it to match my voice. So what do you think? Did it match my voice and the content? Well, I hope so. Anyway, so if you answer yes to all of those questions, now it's time to write your perfect intro, okay? And there are 2 excellent ways to start off your podcast. But again, it can depend on your speaking style. If you're a fast talker, or if you're a slow talker, or if you're a normal person, then you get to kind of use anything you want. Let's look at the fast talker, all right? The guy who really talks fast, or the woman who really talks fast. And there are people out there on the radio, in podcasts. There are people that really rattle off the words very fast. One thing's for sure, I'm not really a slow talker. However, believe it or not, I have another podcast where I am a slow talker. Yeah, so I can adjust. And sound natural. These are things that we can all work on. So a fast talker's intro might sound something like this. Thanks for tuning in to the IOB Podcast, the podcast for podcasters. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about how to set up your intro if you're a fast talker or a slow talker. For all you normal talkers out there, just keep your lips on the mic, which I'm doing right now. A fast talker typically is in a podcast where they're talking about the news, current events, or sports. Yeah, sports is great. Or commentary, like on a movie or something. And even if you have a guest or if you have a regular guest or regular partner, a co-host, banter, sometimes that tends to get really speedy. On the other hand, the slower talkers, obviously a Zen feeling, meditation, right? Spirituality, education. Yeah, these are areas where you do definitely want to slow down so that your listeners can follow you and really understand what you're saying. In sports, it's rip, 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 go, go, go. It's pretty fast, I guess. So for the fast talker, what type of intro do I recommend? Basically, exactly what I did for this podcast. Without any music, at the very beginning, you give them a 5 to 10 second intro of what is coming up in this podcast. Then you've got the intro music coming in, which is exactly what I did. Then you've got your title. Welcome to the IOB Podcast. My name is Mike or whatever. And then the music goes back up and then it trails off and you start the podcast. And that is exactly what I did for this show. For the IOB Podcast, I guess I'm kind of in the fast talker genre in that area. So that's the method I used. But what about a slow talker? In my opinion, the slow talker should skip the intro. I think the slow talker should directly start with the music. And then the introduction, this is the IOB Podcast. And then talk over the intro tail and tell people what's coming up in the podcast. So basically, the content of what you're saying is the same, but the fast talker is going to give an intro blurb, just his voice or just her voice in the very beginning, then the music, then the title, and then the start. But the slow talker, skip the intro, go right to the music, then the title, then the fade, and that's when you actually give the intro, telling people what's coming up in the podcast. Now, does this difference really matter? Come on. Does it really depend on the person's speed, their talking speed? Yes, it does. It really, really does. Especially at the beginning stages of your podcast career, and especially when you're trying to entice new people to listen to your podcast. It's really important. For fast talkers, your listeners need to sync to your voice. They need to hear your voice and realize, oh, okay, so this is coming and it's going to be pretty quick. It's not that the listener is thinking, oh, this is a fast talker, but that they're able to synchronize to your voice is very important. Don't let the music take charge. Your voice, your speed, that needs to set the pace. Then you go to the music, which should be set to your pace too. And when everything is in sync for the listener, it's literally easier to follow. It's very important. However, for the slow talkers, let the music set the tone. Chime in with your regular intro and ride out the tail to introduce the episode. For the slow talker, the music works especially well for syncing listeners. Voice alone can, if you got a slow talking voice, the voice can actually lull people. Now, once they've been charmed by the music, then your beautiful voice, your mellifluous voice, will carry them away. Mellifluous, I love that. That's another Seinfeld word. It's not a Seinfeld word, but it was in Seinfeld, and I just love that word. So this is really important. Once again, most of us are kind of normal speed. But if you are a fast talker or if you are a slow talker, this is something to really consider. Make sure your music fits you. But again, the fast talker, you want your voice to set the tone for the show. The slow talker, let the music set the tone and get the listener synced to your voice. It's very important and it really matters. And it's all about keeping your listener, right? That's exactly what it is. So we've got a lot of upcoming subjects. Once again, the next podcast is going to be an interview, and I'm super excited. It's going to be an interview with a guy from Libsyn. Okay, now Libsyn is one of the podcast distributors out there. It's a fantastic company. They're the company that we use. But the guy we're talking to also is involved with something called the Podcast Academy. And you might be thinking, oh, this is a place where I can learn. No, not really, actually, although they do have a mentorship program. So we're going to find out about the Podcast Academy. We're going to find out about this mentorship program. We're going to find out about Libsyn, how they, work with podcasts and podcasters. We're going to get some great advice. His name is Rob, and I'm super excited to interview him. Actually, I'll be interviewing him tomorrow night. So if you have any questions for this guy, just let me know. Send an email. Also, I'll be interviewing a lady by the name of Jenny Hampson, and she is an artist, and she does podcast art. Now, actually, podcast art is kind of a side gig for her. Okay, but I have scanned the internet for really good podcast art, and there's dozens of websites, and if you go to like Fiverr, you can find tons of people who create podcast art, but Jenny's stuff is extra special. It's really excellent. So I'll be interviewing her also tomorrow night, actually, about what it is podcast art can do. Should we do it by ourselves? Should we hire somebody to do it? What is the point of it? Does it really matter? And again, if you have any questions about podcast art, please send them to me, and I'll ask those questions of Jenny. So this is going to be great. We got Rob Greenlee coming up, Jenny Hampson coming up. We've got a lot of other interviews lined up, so I'm really super excited. If there's somebody that you would like me to interview, if you have questions about some particular aspect in podcasting, let me know, and I'll find an expert, and we'll ask the experts and get the answers for ourselves, okay? My email address, mike@introoutrobed.com. You can also send it to contact@introoutrobed.com. TJ makes all the music. You need to get TJ to make your music. And I think it's time for a critique. The podcast that wouldn't die. Let's rip these guys apart. Can't be done. They're great. Oh my God. Kevin and Erin. Okay, these two people, they critique movies, and they really know their stuff. I'm so impressed with their knowledge and their humor and their banter. The flow of their show is fantastic. It's a really great podcast, and I highly encourage people, if you like movies, they tend to stick to the darker movies, but they're all over the place. I mean, The Matrix, horror movies. This is kind of the podcast that I listen to are basically talking about those. Great stuff. Really, really good stuff. And you can find them on Facebook, The Podcast That Wouldn't Die. Of course, there's no apostrophe in wouldn't. And on Twitter, T Podcast, TW Die. I guess their name is a little bit too long, but anyway, I loved it. So, your intro, guys, Kevin and Erin, your intro was great. The music, nice and short. Then you immediately went into the movie clip that you were going to be discussing. It was fantastic. The ending, however, from the movie clip to your actual intro was a bit abrupt. Now, sometimes the timing was great and it sounded good, but sometimes it really sounded cut, and that can easily be smoothed out. Now, I've listened to several of your episodes, and it seems as though you are doing some editing, so I'm not sure what your level of audio editing is, but if you could smooth smoothen that out, it would really, really sound much better. I noticed that you're using a free music, and the song is really cool. Blue Dot Sessions, Ciclo de Valga. I have no idea how to pronounce that. However, just a little warning, you're not attributing the song correctly in the podcast, and this happens all the time. Be careful of that. Don't worry, nobody listens to our podcast, and I'm not going to contact the outfit that created the music, but it's something that you do really want to pay attention to when you're using free music from other sites. They do have requirements, and it's not difficult to do. All you need to do is usually put a blurb in the comments section. So I really encourage you, Kevin and Erin, to add that to your attributes, to your notes of the podcast. Or better yet, since we are critiquing your podcast, I know TJ would be more than happy to create an intro for you, and perhaps you would use that. And then if she does that for you, you don't need to attribute anything. It's yours. So that's really cool. So anyway, the intro of the show is fantastic. You guys do a great job getting us into what is going to happen. You used Kevin and Erin, you used your name, you introduced your names right in the beginning, but then you don't use them as time goes by. And once again, as a new listener, I want to know you. And I don't want to go back to the beginning to, what's his name again? What's her name again? So sometimes using your name, Kevin, Erin, it's really good to do that. And radio DJs do this. If you've got a host, 2 or 3 guys or ladies hosting a show, they're going to use each other's names. This is actually really important. It's a really good habit to try and get into. You guys have been around for a while, so it might be tough to kind of get back or get into that habit, but it's something that I do encourage you to do, because as a new listener, I'm wondering, who's this guy? Who's this woman? Because, I'm really, it's great. I want to know you. So using your names is always a really good thing. Also, sometimes you have a lot of banter in the beginning, and I forget what it is that you're going to be talking about, the movie, because some of the movies that you're doing are not, The Matrix obviously is a very well-known movie, but some of the movies are not that well-known or from a long time ago. So kind of, re-emphasizing which movie you're talking about, mentioning the name would help a little bit. I noticed that a little bit, but not a serious problem. Remember, the longer the banter, the more reminding you need to do for the listener. The longer the banter, maybe you need to reintroduce the movie sometimes, or even trim the banter. And by the way, I did hear you beep out some bad words. Great job with the beep. So I know that you're editing. So maybe do a little bit more with the music part too. You guys are doing such a fantastic job in your consistency of podcast release. You're better than I am. And that is so important, especially when you become popular. When more and more people listen to you, people are going to say, oh, it's Tuesday, and Kevin and Erin have a new podcast coming out. The podcast that wouldn't die has a new episode coming out. I'm so excited. People really look forward to this. I have an exercise routine, and on Mondays, I listen to this podcast. On Tuesdays, I listen to this podcast. I have a dishwashing routine, and when I wash dishes at a particular time of day so that I can listen to a radio show that I really, really enjoy. So we do, people, set our habits or set our daily routines according to podcasts and radio shows. So your consistency is so admirable. Fantastic. You guys are doing wonderful. Your teamwork is incredible. It's so good, I would assume that you're not a husband and wife, and yet you're like, I don't know, like a sitcom husband and wife. The teamwork is fantastic. I really think it's fantastic. Now to get mean, your voice levels can be fixed. And I'm not sure what method you're using to record. It seems like you're not in the same place. So Kevin is in one place, Erin is in another place, and the best way to handle this type of situation is to have different audio tracks. Does that make sense? So you're on track A, Kevin is on track A, Erin's on track B, or vice versa. And then you can kind of adjust the levels so that they match. Now, generally, actually, you guys are at the same level. You do a pretty good job. The problem seems to be stepping away from the microphone. I don't know what type of microphone you're using, but be careful of that. There are basically two types of microphones, but some of them are very sensitive, and you want to almost literally put your lips on the mic. Other microphones, you can step away, and it will catch your audio just fine. The problem is you get a lot of background noise. And I'll talk about that because I know you have another B-movie club. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit too. So your voice levels can be fixed. It's not really the audio problem. I think it's more of a microphone problem, or maybe a, so to speak, studio where you are. Yeah, that's something to be watched. Now, I've got a couple of examples for you. This is from the Dead and Buried podcast.
Grandpa Joe. Grandpa Joe from Willy Wonka's in it.
He needs to get his ass back into bed.
Yes. You're telling me. I always talk about how it's hilarious. Grandpa Joe in Willy Wonka, he gets out of bed, and Jack Albertson, who plays Grandpa Joe, was like 60 at the time he filmed Willy Wonka.
So he was 110 here.
No, this is only a couple years later. He wasn't that, I mean, comparatively speaking, he wasn't that old. But
here's one from The Matrix.
So obviously they're not relating. I mean, in a sense, they're the virus. If they need that much to do what? To simply exist?
Right. And this is something else that I was confused by, because he's like, Agent Smith is like, you humans, you're like a.
So again, it's more of an in and out type of audio problem. Your audio level is high and then it's low. If we're enjoying the show, to be honest, as you guys probably know, we don't care. However, if it's a new listener and they're starting to get used to your show and your style of speaking, but we got this in and out, and this type of problem, people kind of pass over it. I don't want that to happen to you guys because you guys are doing such a good job. Also, there's kind of an airy sound. And again, that's microphone. I don't know the environment that you're recording in, but by changing that type of thing can really make a huge difference. Something as simple as when you're speaking in front of you, I'm not joking, in front of you, have a couple of shirts like hanging. I know it sounds really silly, really goofy, but if you have a couple of shirts hanging in front of you, they'll absorb so much echo and it really does sound better. And I'm going to embarrass you, Kevin. This is from Highlander.
Sean Connery. Excuse me.
Oh, my Lord.
Just a splash of the vid.
What was that? Are you okay? You be careful. Yeah, you keep that mask on, Kevin. That's something that you can easily edit out if you're editing, and I think you are. So you guys, and this is for everybody, when you're doing a podcast, sometimes there are parts where damn, I wish I didn't say this, or I really want to cut this, or I really, you make mistakes, or you cough, or something, or Kevin, sometimes you open a can. Is it a beer? I'm wondering what you open. But so there's something really simple that you can do that will make your editing so much easier and really fast. And what you do is this. So right now I'm talking and I realize, oh, damn it, I made a mistake. Hey, Erin, hold on a second. All right, let's get back to this. So what I did was I paused just a second and I clapped at least 3 times, 5, 6, 7 times is great. But when you look at the audio in your editing software, you can see that, and then oh, yeah. I need to edit something out here. And it's a really easy thing to do to make sure that you clean up your audio and get rid of coughs and can openings. Although I don't mind the can opening, but tell us what it is. Farts, things like that. You don't want that. Your CTA, call to action at the end of your show, is fantastic. It's a little fast. Remember, there's always, hopefully, right? There's always somebody new. So you might want to slow down a little bit on that. And when you tell people, to listen to the podcast here, there, everywhere, tell them to give a rating, okay? Once again, there are so many great podcasts out there, but some of them really seem to stand out, and I really like your show. The two of you have such a good rapport together. It's fantastic. So have people give you a rating. That is going to help you on iTunes especially, and iTunes is still the king of podcasts. So really tell us to give you a rating, all right? Hey, if you're listening to this on iTunes, please give us a rating. 5 stars, 5 thumbs up, leave a comment, stuff like that. Now, your closing music was exactly the same as the intro, and that is not a problem. That's fine. However, I think it would be cool to make it a little bit more distinct, and also, like I said earlier, to blend the music and your voices together. That really depends on the type of software you're using. That might not be possible, but again, if you're working with, if you decide to get an intro from TJ, she might be able to make something that works for you. That's something that dun, 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 and then you start talking, and then at the ending you can use the same thing again. Sometimes you tell us which movie is in advance. Sometimes you don't. One thing that I really recommend for you guys, I don't know why you're not doing this, especially if you tell us what is coming in advance, give us a DVD link or a Netflix link or, YouTube, wherever it is that we can get this movie, where we can watch this movie to kind of be really in sync with you guys. That would be so excellent. And I don't know, maybe you're totally not into making money, or maybe you are. Using an affiliate link, an Amazon link to a DVD or wherever it is that we can find this movie, in my opinion, is totally acceptable and totally fine. And I think you really should do it, in my opinion. And sweet Jesus, that's one of Kevin's favorite lines. I like that. On Facebook, you definitely tell us what's coming up. You even have some polls and stuff like that. You even ask us what we should do, what movies you guys should do. Really add that to your podcast too. So that's really cool. Your Facebook is active. Your Twitter is active. And remember, and this is to everybody, if you are, nowadays there are so many social media outlets, right? There's this, that, and the other thing. And we want to be active in many different areas, but we're not. Usually it's one place. Maybe it's 2 places. So if your heart is in Twitter, if your activity is in Twitter, or if your activity is in Facebook, that's the channel you should push. You can say, yeah, we're on Instagram, TikTok, this, that, and the other thing. But if you really want to talk to me, go to Twitter or go to Facebook. And this is where we're at. And yeah, do that. Push people to those particular areas. Now, sidebar. On your Facebook page, I saw that you also have something called the B Movie Club. It is excellent. Your rapport together, you work together so great. I think it's a fantastic show, and 194 episodes, as far as I can see at this point. Incredible. You guys are doing fantastic. It's so funny. It's really great. And you know what? The audio, I listened to 194. The audio is really good. The audio is actually, I hate to say this, better. The only problem is the audio is picking up all the background noise. So when your neighbors are walking through your garage and talking, we can kind of hear them. Tell them to shut up. But no, seriously, that audio was actually really good. When it comes to audio, everybody, you want to have a fantastic mic, you want a pop screen, you want filters, you want this, that, and the other thing, and you can do it. You can invest in this stuff and get a wonderful setup. But sometimes Your laptop is enough. Your iPhone is enough as long as it's set in the same position. And as long as you keep your voice, your mouth directed at the microphone. And that's exactly what you guys did for the B Movie Club. You guys are sitting together and you're facing the computer because it's a video. So you're forced to talk to the screen. And that forces your voice in one direction towards the microphone, and that keeps your audio level both perfect. Okay, does that make sense? Sometimes when we're at home making a podcast and I got my microphone right here, and then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to get my drink here, and then I'm talking over here, and then I come back over here. Oh, it's natural. We're humans. We're going to bounce around. But if that camera is on you, it forces you in one direction, and that actually can be really beneficial. Again, it depends on the type of microphone you're using. And if you have neighbors or friends that are walking through your garage as you're recording, tell them to put a sock in it, right? You guys did great. I loved your podcast. I highly recommend it. Again, everybody, they're on Facebook, facebook.com/thepodcast that wouldn't die. And I hope you guys don't. I mean, the podcast. And twitter.com, tpodcast, TW fantastic. Great job. If you would like your podcast critiqued by me, and if we do that, TJ will offer you a free intro. And it's exclusive. So this is a high value offer, including my incredible intelligence as to what the hell am I saying? I'll critique your podcast. We will be nice. And again, if we choose your podcast to critique, we'll offer you a free custom intro. That's a really good deal. So you can send me an email, mike@introoutrobed.com, or you can directly send it to TJ, contact@introoutrobed.com. That about wraps it up, guys. We are on iTunes and hopefully tons of other places, and we would love a rating. 5 stars on iTunes and a comment, please. Well, you can be honest, but 5 stars would really be cool. It would make me happy. Anywhere you see us, if you can leave a rating or a comment, we would love to hear from you. Send us your emails. Get our newsletter, www.introoutrobed.com. Sign up, put your name, your email, confirm. We'll put you in the email list. And every week we try to send out a newsletter. It's pretty good stuff. And that's it. Thank you so much, guys. Have a fantastic week. We'll be back again next week with that great interview from Rob Greenlee at Libsyn and the Podcast Academy.